everybody. I'm really happy that you're here today for this Let's Share the Journey call for Purse Power. And we've got some terrific speakers today. This is going to be a terrific call. Just to remind everyone what Purse Power is about. Purse Power is working to help women use their massive purchasing power to drive positive change. We actually have a national directory of 750,000 women-owned and women-led businesses. We've got a Google Chrome extension that allows them to be found as people are shopping online. And we also have phone apps that allow people to find you when they're physically near you. So any company in our directory shows up on the Google Chrome extension and the apps. So the instructions today, guys, I'm going to need everybody to put their phone on mute if you don't mind, please. We do have a lot to cover today. And again, please do your introductions. That's great. I see people doing it. The call is being recorded. And we will put it up on our website afterwards. And then feel free to make comments in the chat box. If we have time, we'll try to give people a chance to do the discussion. But we just want to make sure we get through all the content today. Okay. So to begin, let me introduce Jean Kelley. And Jean is a very good friend of mine. She's hard to explain and introduce. And the way she explains herself in one sentence is, I drive a Jeep that has Persian rugs on the floor. She is a character and a very, very knowledgeable woman. She teases about having a 1.8 her first semester of college, dropping sociology her first week, leaving school, and living in her car while she was looking for her first job. She got fired from her first job and fired from 5 more within a couple of years. Yet, she was accepted into Harvard Business School Executive MBA program and graduated in 2000. She's never had a business course in high school or college, but at 26, she became a solopreneur and started her first of several businesses. She was the first woman member of the Institute of Management Accountants, and she doesn't have 3 hours worth of accounting classes. She's written 5 books, yet she had no journalism outside of high school. And she admits to having stage terror her whole life, yet she's had hundreds in her seminars and was a guest on Tulsa's CBS affiliate for 5 years. She also wrote the column, if everybody's familiar with it, Dear Jean, for the Tulsa World. She's never worked in a large company, but for the past 19 years, she successfully coached CEOs, COOs, CMOs, and CFOs. So Jean Kelley is amazing. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the books on your coffee table there, Jean, but she's one of our first investors and just a terrific, terrific leader. So welcome, Jean. Thank you. And let me hand it over to you.
Thank you, Donna, and thank you everyone for sharing a little coffee time with me. A special thanks to Karen, Anya, Lori, Cindy, Helen, Annette, Yulia for joining, friends and relatives of mine. In my prior life, I was in the staffing business and I interviewed probably, I don't know, maybe 15,000. Anyway, more than 10,000 women. And I got pretty good at knowing women and appreciating women and what they go through. I didn't know very much about men. And I wanted to because they were confusing to me. There are 2 books that I read that altered my life forever in relationship to men. One is Why Men Are the Way They Are, and Warren Farrell wrote that. He's a friend of Gloria Steinem, and she asked him to do groups with men because she was working with women. So his research came out in that first book of his. And then in the mid-2000s, I found a book called Leadership and the Sexes. And it was written by a man and a woman. And that was really helpful. Also around that time, I was able to get on the computer and find a male-female brain test on the BBC website. And it told me that I was a bridge brain, which is on the female side, which is kind of a cross between a man and a woman. If you'll picture in your mind a bell curve, and I'm oversimplifying this and I'm leaving out the science and the citations, picture a bell curve, and on the left side is men, and on the right side is women. And on the left side, more testosterone than oxytocin or yeah, or estrogen. And on the female side, more oxytocin and less testosterone. Now, I do need to say that, you know, I've read lots and lots of studies. This is obviously theoretical. I don't think anyone anywhere, you know, everybody has an argument, but I don't think anyone anywhere can actually prove this. However, functional MRIs are being used to measure brain activity in response to certain things. So the handouts that Donna has, there's a couple of pictures of functional MRIs of men and women. Some of you on this call may have seen Mark Gungor on YouTube. He explains men and women in a really funny way. And after reading that book, I saw this. He says that men have very unique brains, and there's all filled with little boxes. And there's a box for you, and a box for the kids, and a box for money, and a box for cars, and the garage, and a box for the yard, and vacations, and sports, and political topics, and a box for sex. That's probably a little bit bigger box, but their favorite box of all the boxes is called the nothing box. There's nothing in it, and they love to go to the nothing box to chill. You may have seen men or some women with higher testosterone staring at the screen with a clicker, just staring at the screen. And you go up to him usually and say, "Well, honey, what are you thinking?" And he says, "Nothing." Well, it's absolutely true. Men can, at rest, go into that nothing box and think about nothing. And the men have this rule: these boxes can't touch. They cannot touch. So when they go to solve a problem, they go into that area and they pick out the certain box, and then they work on the problem in that box, and then they gently put the box back where it was, making sure that it didn't touch any other box. Women's brains, Gungor says, are like a ball of wire with an electrical current flowing through. Everything touches everything. So when a woman is solving a problem, she has this huge database because everything's touching everything, and she might be considering a book she read or a commercial she saw or something she saw on Oprah 15 years ago, or all the movies she's ever seen, or what her friends paid for their kids' college tuition, or where she found her glasses the last time she was about to call suicide hotline, or online shopping. So, you know, it's all up there and it's all easily accessed because everything touches everything. Historically, before the Neolithic agricultural revolution, which is about 10,000 BC, life was really different for people on the planet. And the men had to get up every day and go out and hunt for food, while the women would do the gathering, keeping the fire lit once they had fire, tending to babies, tending to other women's babies too, helping each other out to raise a family. When the men went out, sometimes they'd have to sit in a tree for 2 days. And I think this is where the nothing box started, in my own theory. It's like, and I call it screensaver. When you see a guy disengage and you're looking straight at him, but you know he's not looking back, I call that screensaver. They are able to go into this place, and while they're in there, you know, if say they're in a lecture or in a seminar and someone's just, you know, some guy's just knocking his foot around and doing this with his pen, what he's trying to do is get himself out of the nothing box. It kind of looks disrespectful to the person who's making the presentation, but in his reality, you know, he's just trying to come back and participate because he fell into that screensaver place. Another thing I learned from the book Leadership and the Sexes is that men and women lead differently and solve problems differently. We all have gray matter, we all have white matter in our brain. The men use more of the gray matter and the women use more of the white matter, which, and I'm sure you've noticed, because most of the women in here have been the only woman in a room of all men in a meeting. So some of this you already know. I mean, you've known for a long time. Well, a lot of it you've already known for a long time. So the men are, you know, kind of digging deeper into the solution, and the women are adding perspective that would not have happened if a woman weren't in the meeting. So what I'm saying is that meetings are more successful with both men and women. Something floated through my head. I had a picture of some guy bringing back a big animal after 2 days of sitting in the tree, and how excited the women were and how they were jockeying for position to marry this guy. Oh, this is really fun. In the book Sapiens, I read that when back in those tribal days, they knew how pregnancy occurred, but they didn't know who the father was. So the woman would have sex with as many men as possible to make sure that she had the genes of all these desirable guys that she thought were smart or good looking or might bring back the biggest tiger. I thought that was really fun and interesting, but it is kind of odd how human history set up males with more aggression, spatial and territory chemicals, and females with more calmness and verbal bonding chemicals. But again, in oversimplification, it's, you know, testosterone, estrogen and oxytocin, and a combination of everywhere in between. Last night I took a test, male, female brain, and I was a man, and the day before I took a test, then I was a woman. So I think, yeah, there are links on the handouts, so you can go to find the test. The original BBC test I couldn't find because I needed a plug-in that I don't have. Let's see. Talk about male banter. Everybody's been around it. You know, men insult each other all the time, like, "Wow, that jacket you have on looks like it was drugged behind a car that said just married on it." And everybody laughs. And if a woman says that to another woman, well, it wouldn't be met with happiness. I'll just say it that way. And in some cases, you might not be talked to again. I was raised at a time where my mentor was someone who literally went to Washington, D.C. and burned her bra. And so I became a feminist while I was still a teenager, um, after getting fired from those jobs. I did have 8 jobs, but I quit 2 of them, got fired from 6. So I got this job with her. And the feminist culture at the time said that men and women were identical. And, or this is my sense of it. I'm not real sure what the rhetoric was, but this is my sense of it, is that we're absolutely positively just alike. And I always scratch my head about it, because we can't be just alike, because women are the ones who have babies. So when I found these theories, I had something I could talk about. But the language and the male banter, and women trying to be a part of the group, heard a lot of male banter. And when men let you in on their male banter, it's quite a compliment. I would have thought when I was younger that it was an insult that they would count me in on some of their dirty jokes. I just learned to laugh. And I mentioned with Donna one day, is like, the women that were raised at the time I was raised really understand what sexual harassment is. It's not someone telling you, oh, you look good in that dress every day. Back then, you're probably going to get patted at the Xerox copier. So learning to sidestep that is something I wish that we would have taught our daughters, but I don't think it occurred to us the skill that it took, the skill that we had to be able to circumvent those emotional minefields and still continue to work and produce. Some of you may have questions by now, and I'm probably close to 15 minutes in, and I've got another 5 minutes, and Donna can ask a question, or you can put it in the chat box. And while you're doing that, I'll talk about movies. In the book, Why Men Are the Way They Are, I learned to look at movies and superheroes a different way. If you look at an old superhero movie, there won't be a woman superhero in it. Now, in anime and in cartoons and in movies, there are. And also, some years ago, you would never see a woman murdered on the screen. It just didn't happen. But you might see a guy stabbed in the neck with an ice pick. And you just kind of get used to seeing that. Then I thought about, wow, how do young people take that? I wasn't aware of any of that when I was watching movies that might be great. Until I had a grandson, and Cindy Jacoby's on the call, and she is my husband's former wife. She and I are obviously friends and share a grandson in common. And I remember looking at little William one time, and he was just flat not there. Well, he'd gone to that nothing box. I think they might be born with it. Are there any questions yet?
Hey, Jean, this is Donna, and everybody go ahead and take yourself off mute. I wanted to see how you think this applies to the female entrepreneurs on the call. How can they use what you're sharing about the differences between men and women and how they think in business?
What a great question. I think, what's in it for women to appreciate these new studies is that they will have a competitive advantage in any hierarchy. And women have to sell to men as well as women. So understanding them a little bit better, and you can't do that in 15 minutes. You know, if you're interested in it, there are links on the handouts and things that you can read. But, you know, it's to not get offended at something that wasn't meant to be offensive. That's important. And another thing that's interesting about men is they want to get from A to Z right away. How many of you women have, you know, been getting ready for vacation and your husband's tapping his watch saying, we got to make good time. We've got to make good time. Get the kids in the car. What's going on? Come on, we've got to be out of here by 11 o'clock. They want to get there quickly. You've seen a man shop, and I think this has to do with hunters and gatherers. You know, they will go in and get the tool they need and come out. And we will go in and kind of look around because everything's connected to everything. And, ooh, shoes. I think that shoes are what show up as the women gathering thing. Most of us have a lot of them, and we all have reasons for it. So if you're selling to a man, or partnering with a man on a project, maybe a legal case, understand that if he rolls his eyes, you know that you've gone off on a rabbit trail and you weren't sticking to exactly what he had in his box. Sometimes, you know, we have to attend to that and really appreciate where they are in their thought process. And where, you know, and it's not our job really to tell them that everything connects to everything, but it is our job to be aware of that in a meeting, that our mind is sailing all over the place, that computer's working overtime to come up with something. And for us to kind of monitor what it is that we're coming up with and only speak if it's, you know, if it's really good. I've embarrassed myself in plenty of meetings by having my mouth open while I was brainstorming in my head. And I've kind of learned not to do that. So this is also good. You know, I think happy families make happy people, and happy people make happy companies and happy nonprofits. And, you know, to really appreciate where someone's coming from, like your sons. I've talked to so many women who have boys and girls, and they say the boys are so physical. They're just like, and you know, you see them in the back seat when you're on a trip. Do you want me to stop this car? You guys, cut it out. And the girls are more verbal. I've talked to hundreds of women who have both boys and girls who say that. So it is helpful too for an entrepreneur. Family life is part of you, and it's not possible to turn it off at the office because everything's connected to everything. So it's just navigating that and coming out better for it.
Okay, very good. I think we've got about 3 more minutes with you. Anybody, any questions? Okay, you can put them in your chat box if you'd like. Let's see, we've got some people talking about being sexually harassed when they were younger, and they think that the young people, they've coached their daughters. They've grown up with more awareness of it. I don't know that it's gone away. What do you think? The Me Too movement, has that driven a change in how women are treated in the work environment?
I don't know. Do this if you think so, and do this if you don't think so. I love that. That is so good. You know that big sex box that guys have in their brain? You know, it's bigger than the other boxes. It's, you know, and harassment is everywhere, and division is everywhere. And, you know, I don't think it's much different. It is some different. And Deborah said that she, worked in Houston in the late 80s. She knew there was a guy that was kind of a creep in an accounting firm. And she's glad for all the men that she's worked with over the years who've treated her respectfully, been the only woman in the room a lot of times. And I worked in the oil business primarily, so same for me in the consulting business. But there were men in the oil business that championed women like crazy, wanted them on their team. And I thought that's the last bastion of testosterone. And to be able to see these guys promoting and talking to HR about these women was really refreshing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, wonderful. Jean, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. You've got a ton of knowledge, and we'll share your presentation and we'll share your links with everyone. Guys, what we do is we share the recording, we'll email it to everybody on the call, and then it's also posted on our website. So thank you so much, Jean. Sure appreciate it. We were trying to do the clapping thing at the bottom. There's a reactions bar, guys. I don't know if it'll work or not. We can try it, but thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the, thank you.
There we go. We got some clap signs. All right. What I want to do now is go ahead and transition over to Carol Proctor, and Carol is going to introduce Daniel. And let me go ahead and put those bios back on the screen. And my apologies, guys. Christy Vincent said, Donna, make Jean the speaker view. So my apologies for not doing that earlier. Okay. And again, we'll hand you this presentation after the call. All right, Carol, why don't I go ahead and put you up, and would you please introduce Daniel? Carol? Okay, are you on mute? Okay, my apologies. Daniel, why don't we go ahead and have you start here? I want to go ahead and move on to you, and so I'll put your bio here up on the screen. And Daniel and I got to know each other a few years ago when we were both getting certified as executive coaches. He is extremely knowledgeable, and he's going to do a terrific job of sharing his insights on empathy. And I'm not sure, Carol's got a very ill mom, and something might have happened to her mother. So she felt like it was important right now, particularly in the environment that we're in, that we be empathetic with each other. And that's going to be really a key factor in us recovering from the trauma that we're going through right now as a nation. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and hand it over to Daniel.
Thank you very much, Donna. I'm glad to be here. And if you can stop sharing, I'll share my screen. I can't do it.
All right.
You've got my
there you go.
Wonderful picture up there. Thanks very much. And give me just a moment. I've got some slides that'll be available for you here, and I will project them as well as we walk through them. And let's see, hopefully you see the PowerPoint now, and it should be like a real PowerPoint. Okay, excellent. Well, I'm going to talk about the evidence of and for empathy, and I think the time is always right for empathy, in my opinion. Certainly on June 5th, 2020, it couldn't be any more right than it is, in my opinion. And as you may not have noticed in the chat box, and especially listening to Jean's presentation about the difference, I thought, well, this is kind of funny, presenting empathy to a meeting of women, and I'm, I think, the only man in the room, so to speak, in the Zoom room. And by way of background, not my first time being the only man in the room, and doing some stand-up facilitation, as a matter of fact. But I'm really glad to be here, and thanks for your attention. I do think it's a little bit curious, and Jean was talking about this oxytocin testosterone continuum, where the genders do have gifts. It's really a continuum, and we all have both, and you probably know that already. But empathy and oxytocin and connectedness and pieces of the feminine mystique all are wrapped up. So it does feel quite a curious gift to be presenting to all of you today. So thanks very much. And speaking of today, I'm going to drop into some content in a minute, but I did want to talk about today because it is a special day. You know, it's June 5th, 2020, and I wanted to, just by way of introduction a little bit, Carol had emailed me, was there anything I needed to add beyond my bio? I said, no, nothing that I'm not going to present, but I did want to share a little bit of story about me and why this day is kind of important, and especially to be presenting to you and some of what we share and some of what we may not share as well as humans. But I had some gifts in my childhood, a lot. You know, I'm a white male baby boomer, so you know I've got that privilege going for me, certainly. But I had some other particular gifts that most people in the United States and across the globe that I've come across who fit my demographic in terms of being a white male baby boomer haven't received. And some of the, particularly to what we're going to talk about today, those gifts were, I really, by the time I was 13, which was in 1973, I felt pretty aware that there was centuries of racism and it was institutionalized growing up on the south side of Chicago, and that there was millennia of anti-Semitism growing up Jewish in this globe. And so the awareness that a lot of people are getting now about racism, and I think the coronavirus has brought awareness about disadvantage not only of race but economic and so forth, and how it's affecting folks. And I'm thinking, you know, my timeline, you know, sort of this awareness by the time I thought I had it in 1973, and then skipping well ahead to about 1990, when I was interested professionally in what I thought then was management. And I read an article that was called Vision 2020. I think I read it in 1991. And it was about the United States in 2020 and what it was going to be like. And that white people were going to be near the minority and how culture would change. And then a year after that, I was, at that time I was working for Starbucks Coffee, which was a small company. I led the initiative to include the sixth guiding principle for their values around diversity being important and intrinsic to their value. And then 6 months later, most of us were exposed to one of the first videotapings of pretty abhorrent, in my opinion, police brutality, Rodney King, and the riots, which were in 1992. And then dial ahead to now. And, you know, we've been experiencing a pandemic for a couple of months, and that's been very hard on some people, but certainly affected virtually everyone in the globe. And then the events of the last 2 weeks that have brought what people have called the original sin of the United States of racism up to the surface again. And so here we are on June 5th. And one of the things that I want to acknowledge that isn't acknowledged so much in America is what we're also 2 weeks away from today, which is the 155th celebration of Juneteenth. And if you don't know what Juneteenth is, it's a celebration of the emancipation of slaves in the United States. And so I come to you today sort of with that sensibility, and having had a lot of oxytocin fueled in my life for several decades now. And so here's what we're going to talk about today. What is empathy? What's important about it? Why is it important? And most importantly, how are you going to make more? And we're going to try and do that in the next 20 minutes. So we'll just starting with what is empathy. I'd love, you all have heard the term, may know much of what I've talked about already. Enter into the chat box if you're willing some definitions or some ideas on how you might define empathy or what it is. And if I can figure out my screens here to get the chat box up, I may read some of them. Well, I can't, and I've gone to the next slide already. So there we are. This is a dictionary definition, not the definition. But I think in some ways, you know, part of my background.
Uh-oh, Daniel, you're frozen. Uh-oh. Did we lose Daniel? Can you guys hear Daniel? No?
No.
Okay, all right. Ryan, would you please try to contact him and make him aware we can't hear him? I'm sure he's probably logging back in.
Donna?
Yeah.
Well, while he's logging back in,
Yeah.
I forgot to talk about testosterone cycle. While we have a 28-day cycle, men have a 24-hour cycle. This is especially important if you're coaching men or if you're a salesperson. Men have their testosterone rises in the morning, wanes in the afternoon, and then hits a peak at 9 o'clock at night. That explains a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah. All right, well, let's keep having the conversation about empathy. You guys, and you can take yourselves off mute if you want to talk until he gets back. Just Carol was feeling like in our nation right now that this is a really important topic, that we try to put ourselves in other people's shoes and understand where they're coming from. And that's the reason why I had Daniel join us. What are your thoughts? Go ahead.
I think this is Ellen, and I think it's important we go underneath and understand where we're really coming from, which is harder to do. Listening is one thing, even caring, but where are we coming from? And I guess it's hard work going into our subconscious.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
Right. Stuff happens.
I'm back.
Go ahead.
Okay. I don't know how that happened. My computer just shut down and rebooted. I apologize. Slides are coming back and I'm already here. So,
all right.
Here we are. So I was saying the picture is kind of worth 1,000 words. I think it really, for me, has a good definition of empathy. It's this connection of two human beings in a cartoon form of hearts and minds really connecting is a good way to think about empathy. So why is empathy important? You know, ROI, and I'm going to talk a little bit on ROI from a business standpoint, because there's some science behind that. I'm also going to talk about the ROI in terms of humanity from a personal standpoint and an intrapersonal standpoint. So there's several things, several key things that come to mind for me when I think of a business standpoint and a case for empathy. There's an organization in the United Kingdom that actually measures empathy of corporations, and they have found that the top 10 companies in their measurement increase value. This is actually number 3 on slides there. Increase their value and almost quite a lot more than the other ones, and which equals about 50% more earnings than the ones at the lowest end of their empathy scale. One of the things that stuck out to me, I'll may be familiar with Ryanair, which is a low-budget airline, and what their CEO said after they made some shifts in trying to provide better customer service is he was surprised and said, you know, if he'd only known customer service was going to work so well, he would have done it many years ago. They actually captured $1.67 billion off of their kindness initiative when they did that. So some real dollars there. As well, you may be aware of the Google study in 2017. It really brought empathy, emotional intelligence in a new way to the Fortune 500 set. It was great analysis. You can Google and find out about it, but it's Project Aristotle, and what they found really clearly that the EQ, especially empathy, created better innovation than the IQ of the brain trust. So not a surprise. I work with a lot of high-tech folks here in Seattle, as well as in the healthcare field, and it's certainly very easy to see in a lot of those teams and collaborations. And that gets to sort of the last point of the business case, that skilled workers, and I think it's, you know, beyond even skilled workers, and I think some of what we're going through now as a nation, and maybe the globe even, presents this, is that people want to have a voice. They want to be heard, and so culture, and having a culture that is empathetic and allows people to be heard, can be a big difference in attracting and retaining the right people. So there's also the human case, and just a couple of quick things. And you know, all of these things do have some evidence, there's some science behind it. It's not, some of it's not rigorous, some of it has been done with fMRIs. But all of it, in my experience, has great face validity. So increases in empathy has been done on MRIs. It showed bigger results in happiness, in the physical shape of people, and interestingly enough, immunity and immune systems. And so think of it, you know, now immune systems are much more in the news or in the vogue, and having a healthy one, and you're increasing your empathy can be a help in that regard too. Increases in empathy, increased communication, and what that doesn't mean you get your point across better. It means the communication, this two-way street, is more effective and powerful and can have more meaning. And then lastly here, it's pro-social behavior, and which is the opposite of antisocial behavior. So it's a good thing, and which means we kind of get, because of those things, we get both individually and at a community level, less depression, less anxiety, and less negativity in the world by increasing empathy. So here's some simple ways to increase your empathy. Curiosity, you know, use questions instead of statements. Widen your circle, and there's some interesting research around this, and particularly about the neuroscience of racism. You can, connect with me, I'll send you an article I just posted on LinkedIn a couple of days ago, which was very fascinating, and sort of fleshes this out as well, is that racism is not inherent. Humans do have a negative bias inherently. It's amygdala hijack. You may have heard some of this. I won't get into all the science about it, but we do have a negative bias for a lot of reasons. And so we do other things and people and so forth. That being said, the more contact, the less othering we do. And it's neurological. So that your chemistry will change as you widen your circle and do things like that. Kind of the same thing with fiction, and we've all probably had this experience. I was thinking earlier today, you know, like some of those books that we read in grade school or high school, like Tom Sawyer or To Kill a Mockingbird, that opened up different worlds for a lot of people, opened up a sense of empathy. And that's something we can do. You can read about different people, different lives, different communities to increase, and it actually does increase your empathy. You can test on it and retest, and you'll see changes if you're diligent. And then finally, and probably most importantly, is this asking people how they really are. This is a great time to do it with how our country and our world is doing these days. But ask with your whole person, and look at how they're responding. What is their facial gestures? What is their body language? What's their overall demeanor? And see if you can really understand and feel and experience their feelings as you ask. So in just a minute, well, pardon me, we're going to do go into breakout rooms, and I'm going to put you in pairs, and you're going to have about 12 minutes total. And I'm going to ask you to use this list of as a guide for the instructions, I'll give you a minute for the breakout rooms. But these are steps, and there's a handout. Were you able to get the handout into the chat box?
Ryan was going to go ahead and put it in the chat box. Would you do that now, please?
So it's just a little further detailed explanation of the slide you see. Thank you, Ryan. The slides you see in front of you of these 10 steps. Many of them you know. Some of this won't be news to you, but it's worth thinking about in terms of increasing your capacity to be an empathetic listener when you want to. And so your body language as a listener is important. Distractions, cell phones, so forth. Being able to listen without judging, not making it about you, being present to who you're listening with, paying attention to nonverbal cues, avoid offering solutions, don't downplay their concerns, reflect their feelings back to them if it's appropriate, and don't worry about not getting it right. What they really need is you, and as the quote said, is just this wonderful gift that can really change the world is just being able to listen to someone.
Okay, would you like them to go into breakout rooms now?
Let me just go over the slide and tell them what they're going to do, and then they can do it. Thanks, Donna. So here's what you're going to do in the breakout rooms. There'll be 2 of you in each breakout room, so an A and a B person. Partner A will take 5 minutes and share, and what I'd like you to share is a story that's in your past about a silver lining, something that maybe was hard, but you learned some valuable lessons to, and you'll share that with person B, and person B will be doing their best to sort of practice those empathetic listening skills. You'll have about 5 minutes to share the first person, and then we'll give you a signal at the end of 5 minutes. I want you to actually take a minute of silence before shifting to the second person. If you feel a need to speak during that minute of silence, I'd say what I'd invite you to share is what it was like to share if you were partner A, or what it was like to listen if you were partner B, and just share your experience in that sense. We'll give you a minute for that reflection, and then we'll do the same thing, switching roles, and then we'll take a couple minutes at the end to allow you both to debrief together and share whatever you would like to share with one another. We'll reconvene as a group after that, after about 12 to 13 minutes. Okay. Any questions, you can put them in the chat box, and if you're definitely welcome to not share. Everybody can pass, anybody can choose to pass if you want, and you're also welcome to not choose to be in a breakout room if you don't feel like this is right for you today.
Okay, the system should be inviting you to a room. Please accept the invitation and go. Yeah. Okay, so we're right at time, but it's okay. We can run over hopefully a couple of minutes, and the people that have to leave have to leave.
Okay, I'll just
there we go, Jane.
flip through a couple quick slides.
See you back. Gotta love this technology, you know?
When it works.
When it works, I know. Ah.
Well, it worked beautifully, but we didn't get to hear from Jane. We can't tell if she could not hear Julie and I or what.
Oh no, really? Oh, dang. Dang, dang, dang.
Julie, could you hear?
I didn't know I was in your group, Victoria.
Oh, honey, you
I
were
was
right
in
there.
a group all by myself.
No, you were with us.
Well, I got out of the group all by myself, but I didn't know I was with you.
with Julie and I, we kept saying, okay, Jane, and I thought, well, maybe she can't hear.
Oh boy. All right, it's just been one of those things. All right, I think everybody's back now, hopefully.
Okay, I'm just going to go, a couple of quick slides. We don't have time for report out or anything like that. So just a couple of other exercises you can think about, and these will be in the slides. One is this idea of shared identity, where you can sort of think of somebody, you think, you know, your neighbor. I had a great one at my last residence. Think about somebody who you don't like or are having trouble with, and what are the things that you might have in common with them. So there's a little exercise, and these can be like exercises at the gym. You will find if you repeat these ideas for a period of time, you will change, you will find some changes in your sense of empathy. This last one here, this next one here is the face of human suffering. It's another way you can do it with yourself or other. And then finally, you know, the one that I have found in my life that is really kind of rocket fuel is meditation. And there's one that's in the handout, the compassion meditation. And actually, if Donna, I will send you a recording if you feel moved to do it. It is a little bit long. And it's, if you've never meditated, it may be a lot for you, but what I have found, even, and the science will show you, is pretty clear on mindfulness and meditation. It doesn't matter how, well, there's no evidence in a benefit for long meditation. It may be more beneficial or not. What there is clearly benefit for in terms of your neurology is the regularness. So a minute or 2 or 3 a day can have a very profound impact.
Okay.
So with that, I'll leave it to you.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. I sure appreciate it. I just want to ask everyone to, if you're religious, please pray for Carol's mother. Carol has lost her sister, her brother, and now may lose her mom, all within a period of about a month or a month and a half. So please be thinking about her. The second thing is I want to let everybody know we are going to have one of the top female entrepreneurs in the world. Phyllis Newhouse is going to be joining us next Friday at 10:30. So we're moving the call back by half an hour, but she's amazing and you're going to want to be here. Daniel, thank you so much for being here today. Sure appreciate it. Terrific job. And everyone have a great weekend.
Thanks very
Thank you,
much.
guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hey, Donna,
Yeah.
what's the woman's name who's good? I like to look her up next week.
Phyllis Newhouse.
Okay, N-E-W-H-O-U-S-E.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She's amazing. She's a vet. She's an African-American woman, and she's got $1 billion business.
And she's a vet?
And she's a vet. And she's going to be here next week.
Oh, wow, that sounds good.
Yeah, it will be.
I can get behind that. That is going to be fascinating.
All right. Well, thank you, Jean, for what you did today. It was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hey, Donna, I have a quick
Yeah.
question for you.
Yeah.
Are you going to continue doing these? I find them so energizing and fun, and it's just enjoyable to get to connect with other women and to hear these speakers. And Jean, your presentation was thought-provoking and fun, and I'm telling you, I definitely saw my husband and myself when you talked. Me, I'm making connections all over the place. He's just driving straight down the road, but we work. It works well. We balance each other.
Yes, we're going to continue doing these, and I hope you're getting value out of it. Sounds like you are. And again, this was a terrific day. And next Friday, we're going to move it back by half an hour. But she's seriously the top female entrepreneur in the world, or one of them. She's amazing. She'll be with
Exciting.
us.
So, so when you say move it back, are you saying you're going to move it back half an hour or forward
Yes.
half an hour?
No,
Okay.
10:30. It'll be 10:30 Central Time.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good
All right.
week.
Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.